we're going to go ahead and get started with the AR training. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say what I said on January 23rd to the managers that were here that day. I said, congratulations, okay? Congratulations for being selected for the audit, because you're going to get a chance, you're gonna have a chance to highlight and showcase your programs. You all do great jobs. I know you have a lot of programs like at your school, you run a really big operation, and you know, you'll get to show that to the auditors, you'll get hopefully a lot of positive feedback, and they'll you know, really see what you do up there. I know some of you have had the audit before, right? Teresa, have you had it before?
The last one.
The last one, there you go.
I had
So,
two.
and you had it too. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's work to make sure that you perfect everything, because, you know, these are not anything new that you should be having to do for the audit, but it's just making sure that everything is, you know, perfect, okay? So, with that said, we're gonna get started. Okay, we have had 25 schools selected for the audit. Of course, you guys are on the list. They will be reviewing the month of February, so that's why we really wanted to have the meeting, the makeup session today, so that when tomorrow hits, you have everything perfect for the month of February, because those will be the documents that they'll be reviewing, okay? And they may ask for those documents before they come. Now they're getting into the habit of asking for things ahead of time, so you need to make sure you keep up with everything timely, okay? And then, of course, they will be here the week of April 3rd through the 7th. Most likely, Monday through Thursdays, the Monday through the Thursday is the days that they go to the schools. And then Friday, it's usually the exit conference, okay? So as we get closer and they let us know what specific day they'll be at your school, we'll let you know, okay? All right, so there were 19 elementary schools that were selected. This is a list. You have it on the back of your agenda so that you can see all the schools that were selected. There are, you know, a few that were repeats, okay? Sometimes they haven't wanted to go to the same schools, but this time they just went straight down the list. The reason you're selected is because you guys are the schools that have the highest participation of free. For how many approvals you have, you guys feed the most students in the free category is what they look at, okay? So they just pick those, and that's who they're going to. These are the elementaries. These are what they call the combination schools. Combination, of course, is that they call an elementary pre-K through 8th grade, okay? And then combination and secondary is 9 through 12. But if you have grades like 6 through 12, like Tamara, then it's a combination, and the other one is Young Men's Preparatory, which is also a 6 through 12, okay? All right, now we're gonna, if you can refer to your questionnaire that's in your folder, or for those of you that are from schools, I think your coordinator would have sent that to you, your supervisor would have sent that to you last week. I just want, Carol, we got it from your manager, right? So we're just gonna go through it, hopefully you filled it out correctly, but I'm gonna go over it a little bit in detail. So if you need to revise any of your responses, you can do that. If you need to go back to your school and there's something that you still weren't able to get, like the field trips or something, let us know, okay? Otherwise, you can just turn in your questionnaire when you leave. All right, so obviously the top portion, your name, the location, all that good information, your principal's name. Then what grades does your school have? I think we should know what grades you have in your school, but just in case, we always have to check it with what we've sent to the state, okay? Then we want to put on here, number 2, your meal periods. Okay, so breakfast, lunch, and then do any of you have Head Start at your schools? No? Teresa, you don't have Head Start?
Pre-K.
I'm sorry?
Pre-K.
Pre-K, okay. So, but it's not a Head Start. All right, so then just put in your beginning time and your end time of both breakfast and lunch, okay? And then number 3, okay, it says, do you ever serve lunch before 10 a.m.? Obviously, number 10, in number 2, you would have written if your breakfast or your lunch starts before 10. But this is just like, are there any times, any exceptions, like, for example, like in a high school, if there are times when, you know, it's early release or something like that, that you have that requires you to sometimes serve before, or sometimes when there's testing, they ask you to start earlier, or something like that. So are there times when you have to vary your meal times, okay, and start earlier? So just yes or no, and if so, why, okay? Okay, number 4, does your school have offer versus serve for all of the students? So by this I mean, do all of your kids go through the line, okay? And do they get to choose what they want, okay? So if all of your students do, and they all get to choose all of the items and components, put yes. If not, do you have like a head start that maybe they don't get to choose for whatever reason? Maybe sometimes you have teachers that don't want them to have specific choices. Like the other day, one of the schools was telling us that for breakfast, they don't allow them to have chocolate milk. Sometimes, the pre-K teachers want to, they think that the little kids can't choose, and that they're gonna take too long, or that they don't know how to choose. So you have those circumstances, okay? I need to know so we can address it, if we have to, like we talked to, after we asked at the school, we told them, okay, if you can't serve chocolate milk for breakfast, then they're gonna just have to order skim milk. And when they talked to the principal, she said, no, they're gonna be allowed to drink the chocolate milk. So sometimes it's just another conversation saying, well, if you don't, then this is what we're gonna have to do. So just let us know if there's any students. Sometimes you have just a few ESE kids or special kids that, they can't make the choices, so maybe it's 1 or 2, 10, however many that just can't make the choices, okay? So I just want to document so that we're not surprised when the auditors get there, because otherwise, if you don't tell me that you have any exceptions, we're going on the fact that when the auditors get to the schools, everybody's gonna get to have, everybody follows offer versus serve, okay? And they're gonna expect that. If they don't, if Sonia tells me, no, there's these few kids that that can't, whatever, then I just specify that, and as long as they know, it's okay.
Yeah.
So it's okay to say no, but I just need to know ahead of time, okay? All right, number 5, do you have meals served outside of the cafeteria? Okay, so that means either, in the classroom, sometimes the little ones, they have them eat in the classroom for whatever reason. Sometimes the Head Start's eat in the classroom. Sometimes for breakfast, there's some outside carts, okay? Anything that is outside of the cafeteria. So do you have any classes, any grades, anything for breakfast or lunch? Okay? And then, like it says there, indicate if they use rosters or they have net POS. Does anybody here, the 4 schools that are here, do any of you have any kids that don't eat in the cafeteria? Teresa? Everybody goes through the cafeteria, through the line? Yes? Sonia?
Yes.
Yeah? And Carol, we would have addressed that with, that, right? Oh, and Tamara, sorry?
No.
Everybody, okay, great, we like that, okay. All right, number 6, do you have any non-resident programs? So do you feed anybody, any satellite? Well, you are a satellite, but your kids are registered in your school. So, and you have the POS, so no. Nobody has any non-resident students? Anybody that you feed that's not enrolled in your school, basically? No? Good, all righty then, moving right along.
You mean if it's, you don't mean like for Pine Villa, you mean if they're in their POS, right?
Right. Yeah, if it's a satellite school, like Pine Villa is a program of itself, they're enrolled there, and they go through the line. So it's just like, when you have a small little outreach program,
Right.
or something like that, okay? All right, it's really wherever, it's a program that doesn't have a computer at their site, and then they're non-residents, okay? All right, number 7, are you aware of any field trips that you'll be providing for the month of February? Okay, yes or no? The reason we want to know is specifically, if you're gonna have a field trip and it's gonna require a roster, we want to know ahead of time, because you know how they look at those rosters really, really carefully. So we want to know just to be prepared. If you don't know right now, and you find out, let's say right now, maybe you say that there is none, and you find out, you know, how they sometimes surprise you with those field trips. But really, you should go back to your school, and if you haven't already had that conversation, let your principal know that it's very important that we know ahead of time, this month, because of the audit, okay? Number 8, the same thing, do you have any field trip schedules for April, the week of the audit, specifically, okay? It's real important because then, you know, they're gonna be observant, and they're gonna observe that you follow the roster, the roster procedure to the T, and we'll talk about that a little later. So if you know, and let's say I just got an email yesterday from one of the schools that had come on January 23rd, and they said that they were having a field trip one of the days of the audit, so, of the week of the audit. So what I'll do is, if that school gets selected to be observed that day, I can try to switch them with another school, okay? Because you don't need that added pressure of having them, the auditors there watching you do the inputting of the roster and all the verification and everything, so it's just easier. So if you know ahead of time, hopefully you could maybe get it changed, but if there's nothing that we can do, I mean, that the school can do, then we can try to make sure that your audit isn't that day, okay? So, do any of you know of any in April? I know there's the youth fair sometimes at that point, I think, no?
They told me they didn't have one. I asked this morning.
For February or April?
February.
For February, nothing good so far. All right. Number 9, do you know of any special okay, standard, yes, do you know of any special arrangements that you need for the week of April, okay? Any standardized testing that's going on, you know, sometimes they want you to feed the kids in the classroom, or sometimes they just want you to alter, you know, the meal times, anything that's going on, again, the week of the audit, because again, if we've told the auditors that your lunchtime is from 10 to 12, and that day they ask you to do it from 11 to 1, we need to know, okay? So either that, or you know, they're not gonna be able to go through the line, they're gonna ask for bag lunches. I mean, we had a school yesterday asking for bag lunches for a particular test date. So again, we just need to know anything that's gonna be out of the ordinary. All right? Number 10, a balance report or database must be printed every week. You know that, you print it every week. So for example, we said, did you print it for the week of January 17th? And is it readily available? You know, you have to have it available, okay? And then I saw the email go out from Olga. She reminds everybody every month, at the end of the month, to print your database, right? Okay? Number 11, have you and your entire staff, including newly hired substitutes, been trained on civil rights compliance procedures? You know, at the beginning of the year, Helen at the opening of school provided the training for all the managers and satellite assistants, and then you all went back and you trained all of your employees, right? Yes?
Yes.
All right, so anybody that's come on board since then, you've had to provide the training also, so that you have everybody in your school trained on civil rights, okay?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, hi Sabrina,
Hi, how are you?
Good. All right, so, any questions on that, we're good? All right, then the next thing is, to your knowledge, have there been any written or verbal complaints alleging discrimination? Okay, any discrimination, complaints that you're aware of at your school? Helen will go over the procedure. You know, there's a procedure. Then there's a form that has to be filled out if you're aware, if anybody comes to you and, you know, lets you know. Anything? No?
No.
Okay, good, all right. Sabrina, where, if you just take out your folder, the questionnaire. We'll finish it up later, because we're almost finished with it.
Okay.
All right, so we'll talk about it later. All right, and then the number 13, I'm sorry, the webinars that you get every month, right? You had the one from October and November, right? Was it October, November?
November.
Yeah, October,
November,
November, December, sorry, was Luana Marcella with, the, offer versus serve,
Right.
right? And then January, we had Manny Passerin with the presentation. you know, you've seen the presentations, and then you arrange a day that you're going to show it to your entire staff. You get the signatures, you send those rosters to our office, right?
Yes.
And we gotta make sure that everybody sees those videos, and you have it at your school, we have it here, because when the auditors come, that's a new thing that they'll be looking for this year. You didn't have that the last time, because this was a new requirement, okay? So they're really into making sure that we're providing the professional development that we're supposed to, okay? And that assures that everybody will have the hours, okay? So if you have any new people that haven't seen them, they need to do that. The district's wellness policy, Audra has, talked about the wellness policy at the other meetings that we've had. We will be providing a tipster for you, or something that we'll be sending to your schools, so that you can go ahead and just train your staff on wellness, because that's something that maybe the auditors will talk to them about. So we'll provide something for you, and then you can go ahead and train them on that. Because originally, we had thought that you had gone over wellness at the opening of school agenda, but when we looked at the part-time agenda, that wasn't included on there. So we'll do something for you and send that to you, okay? Because when we did the October meetings, we kind of thought it had been covered and we talked about it, but then when we looked more carefully, it wasn't on there. So we'll provide something for you, okay? Then number 15, your most recent health inspection. When was that? Have your deficiencies been corrected, yes or no? If not, let us know what's still outstanding, any work orders that need to be worked on. Your schools will get priority, okay? The 25 schools will get priority to make sure everything is corrected and everything looks good, works well. So anything that you really, maybe some piece of equipment or something that hasn't been working, let us know, because now's the perfect time to prioritize your sites, okay? And then, of course, you're gonna tell me yes to number 16, that you've been completing the HACCP weekly checklist every week, right? And that you have it available. We'll go over that a little bit later, okay? So at this time, if you have completed your checklist and wanna submit it to me, I'll take it. Okay. When we meet again, in the month of February, we'll go over the checklist. If there's, as you go, the questionnaire, I'm sorry. If you see that anything changes, let us know, let your supervisor know, and we'll update the information, okay? Samara? All right. Okay, all right. The way we're gonna do the training today is, we're gonna go through, in your folders, you have this checklist, right? And we're going to go step by step through the checklist. Some of you may have already seen this checklist. Hopefully all of you have seen the checklist, a lot of you managers and satellite assistants, because the checklist would have been provided for you guys. Some of you, right before we went to a winter recess, if we knew or we thought your schools would be selected, if not right after we came back. Your supervisors were to ask you to complete this on your own, kind of do like a self-assessment of your school, and then return it to them. So at some point, I think you should all have seen it, correct? You got it, right? Karen sent it to you, you filled it out, and you gave it back to her, right? Sonia? You haven't seen it? Okay, all right.
Well, I wasn't selected at the beginning.
Originally, right?
It wasn't a focus.
Okay,
Right.
all right, okay, so, there you go, you got saved by the builder. Okay, but now you are, and you're an expert, because this is your second time around.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so, and Teresa, you got this from Marcella? Yeah. Okay, all right, so, and Tamara, all right, okay. All right, so you may or may not have already done it at your school on your own, okay? If not, your supervisors this week will be at your schools completing this, okay? And then this is a tool that basically what I wanna say is, this covers, it pretty much tries to cover everything that the auditors, will be looking at, okay? So this is kind of just like a tool that you can use to kind of, check got that, no, this isn't maybe exactly the way it's supposed to be. That's why it says yes or no, and then you can put on there any corrective action that's needed, anything that's pending, so you can refer to it, okay? And hopefully, something that's, outstanding, this week, as you go through, because we have pretty much 2 full months to do this, everything will be, perfect by the time they come, all right? So it's something that you're not just gonna fill it out once and put it away, you're gonna, you should be referring to it, because sometimes something went well today by chance, okay? And you go back tomorrow and it's not, so it's something that you need to keep referring, it's like a tool to just keep working with. Your supervisors will be, using this, when they go to your schools as well, all right? Okay, all right. So we're gonna start with number 1. It says, do all students enter their student ID numbers into the keypad? So very important, that our process, our procedure is that all the kids put in their numbers, okay? They put in their numbers, into the keypad, right? That's the first identifier, they put them in there. Now, of course, if you have maybe sometimes very little kids, pre-K to 2nd grade, or some ENC kids that can't put in the number, they can have assistance, okay? Hopefully, that's not the case, at this point anymore, especially for the little kids, because by now, they should know their numbers, right? And they're putting it in themselves. But if not, the teacher can, assist them, or the cashier can assist them. Any problems with any kids in your schools? No? They're all putting it in themselves?
Not pre-K though.
Not pre-K. All right, okay. Well, let's see, put that, keep that in your head, and maybe, maybe all they need is to, the teachers work with them a little bit longer.
They know their numbers, but they can't put them
They
in
put it
because
in.
they only have 2 numbers. And the keypad takes 3 sometimes. Or the ID number, they don't know the ID number.
Okay, so maybe we just need to provide it to them, and practice with them. Put that, Helen, can you write that somewhere so that we can see, maybe Shalisa can, sometimes what we do is we give you a copy of like a printout of the keypad, and sometimes the teachers, kind of practice it with them in their classrooms to kind of help them, so that it's, the burden's not on you, and we can do that. I mean, we have some schools even this week
Right.
that were being converted from their account numbers to their ID numbers, and, I think they went to a school yesterday where the teachers had given them their numbers last week, and they were already putting them in there, and they were little ones. So I think if we work a little with them, it could work. So Sonia, you said you have a problem with the
Yeah.
pre-Ks, and Teresa?
We're gonna print out the,
Yeah, perfect.
I had it.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, your kids are big, so you're okay. And Carol, they're good. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's that. Then when we go to the second identifier, okay, there has to be a second identifier. The second identifier, what is that? The verbal, what are we talking about? What has to happen, people? Right, who has to verbalize the name? The cashier or the student, right? Either way, but it has to happen, okay? And the only other thing they could do is have their photos, all right? The photo ID to show the photo ID, or if anybody has it where it's coming out on the POS. Anybody have that where the pictures are coming out on the POS?
Had it.
You had it?
Yeah, and when they looked, when my computer crashed, all the pictures were lost.
Oh, gosh.
So I have to try to find a way to get it back.
Okay, all right, we'll see if that can happen, okay? And that's really, really important, okay, about the ID. And we had a school where somebody went yesterday, and the verbal identifier wasn't being used at all, okay? So please, you're the manager and you're just not out there, you don't know what's going on in your, what your cashiers are doing. You can, yes, I told them. Well, you told them is not good enough. It's like your kids, you tell them what to do, but unless you're there watching them, sometimes you gotta know. You don't wanna be the day of the audit finding out that your cashiers are not asking for verbal identifier or saying anything, okay? So please, make sure you go out there and that verbal identifier is being implemented, okay? And then, of course, where it says that all the information, meal eligibilities are confidential, okay? So nobody needs to let anybody know this child is free, reduced, all that, any monies that are due are handled, personal, in your office or anything like that, okay? Okay. All right, we talked about the databases to make sure that you have them weekly, okay? The elementary schools usually run them by classroom, right, and the secondaries by alphabetical, okay? And then your monthly databases that you have to have at the end of each month, okay? Everybody's been seeing the emails and running your databases, you have them for all the months? Yes? Okay, all right, great. All right, now we're on number 5, okay. When meals are served without an electronic POS, okay, is a roster checked off at the moment each meal is served, signed and dated, okay, by the staff member distributing the meal. All right, if you have any, you all said that you don't have kids that eat in their classroom, right? So you don't really have any situation where on a regular basis rosters are being used, correct? Right? No? No, okay. So anytime we're talking about rosters is basically for any field trips, right? All right. Okay, we may have some good news about field trips, which we'll let you know maybe next week or something like that. So, but for right now, for field trips, you gotta make sure that you follow the procedure. You know, you have to give the kids the teachers the roster, right? When the roster comes back, I'm gonna go by here. When the rosters are used, you give out the roster. When the roster comes back, the cashier inputs that information, right? Then later you need to print the historical to show, so that you can verify what was input versus what was checked off, that it all matches, correct? Yes, right? And you check it against attendance bulletin also to make sure that nobody that's marked absent is marked as having received a meal, correct? You guys are not as lively as our group on January 23rd. Everybody was like very vocal, yes, okay. All right, and of course, you have to follow the procedure to make sure that you, when you have a field trip, that all of the components are served, okay, and the correct amounts, okay? So that's procedure V5, and we'll be, hopefully updating something that'll be a little bit less work for everybody, but we won't share that today, but just make sure you follow V5 so that you can make sure that you have all the components and the correct sizes, especially when it comes to a high school, okay? All right? Okey doke. I guess I really won't go that much into rosters since you guys don't have any meals in the classroom, but the rosters are used even when, if there's a child that's in the clinic, or again, any student that they're saying that they can't go through the line, you're supposed to have a roster. I mean, if the child is eating, is not coming to the cash register and they're just sitting at the table and the teacher has to go or somebody has to go get the meal, we need a roster for that, okay? If they don't go through the line, they need a roster or something like that that shows the student's name, right? Okay? And we just really wanna know, any sites that are using rosters, because again, we need to check and triple check, double check all those rosters, because when the auditors come, they look at them really carefully, to make sure that if Gabby was the one that was marked, it's not the person right below her or the person right above her that got input. It has to be Gabby, okay? So that's why we specify so much about rosters, knowing about them. We want you to check them, we want you to double check them, we want your supervisor to double check them. We're gonna take those rosters and we're gonna check them because, that's really important, okay? That includes, of course, any after school, the only after school programs that they're gonna be looking at is if they're Head Starts. You all said that you don't have Head Start, so you don't have to worry about the snack program, okay, at your sites. All right, kind of went over B9 about the rosters. Obviously, you have to always make sure you have the final attendance bulletin, okay, every day, because again, you wanna make sure if a roster is used, that any of the students, that were absent weren't marked, weren't marked absent and they received a meal. Sometimes they were just tardy, and then that has to be updated in the bulletin, okay? That the rosters are checked off and signed for field trips and classroom meals at the time the meals are served, okay? And then when you get them back, you wanna make sure that they are signed and dated, okay? All right. Now we're gonna talk about non-reimbursable meals, number 9. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, non-reimbursable meals, what are the 2 times that your cashier's supposed to use, press the non-reimbursable key? What are the 2 instances, what do we use that for?
Trade falls.
The tray falls and,
Student uses
The student use the number.
right, those are the only 2 times that can be used, right? Okay, and procedure E2, okay, explains that. They also, I don't know if I put it on here. Yes, no. No, but I didn't know if it was one of the slides. All right.
E2 is on there.
It is? Yeah, you're right. There it is. Those are the 2 instances. All right, and those are the keys, okay, that you need to have on your overlay, okay? You have your breakfast and your lunch for elementary and secondary, okay? If you don't have those on your overlay, okay, you don't know how to put it on there, you can always ask the help desk, your supervisor should be able to help you, but just make sure that you always have that on there so that your cashiers can use that key, okay? And then just remember the documentation that you have to have, the supporting documentation that you have to have along with that, okay? Part of the event log, right? Print the portion of the event log showing the day's activity for the student who received the non-reimbursable meal, indicated the student account was used in error or if the meal was filled, okay? And then you should also have a student account information, showing that the student is free, reduced, paid, so that they have the eligibility, okay? And all that is kept with your daily paperwork, okay? So you have to have the non-reimbursable information with your daily paperwork, okay? Okay? And then, it's not, the same thing if a student wants to buy a second meal, okay? Besides, of course, charging them for the second meal, okay, depending whether it's breakfast or lunch, there's a key, okay? Those are the keys, okay, the recipe numbers, and you make sure that that's used, and, it's on the fixed a la carte overlay with the recipe numbers, those are it. And the prices, okay, what you're supposed to charge. You do, in either case, the cashier doesn't have to itemize the meal, but they just have to use those recipe numbers, okay? Any questions, anything? Good? Time for me to stop and Helen to go. All right, thank you.
Okay, good morning again. We're going to continue with the presentation we're on page 2 of your checklist. Are cashiers accurately entering the items on the student's tray? Well, what do you think in your own schools? Are the cashiers absolutely accurate all the time? 100%?
No.
No? What do you think the percentage might be of accuracy, if you had to guess? 70? Anyone think they do any better? Yours, right? Okay, all right. We strive, no one's perfect, but there are many errors or omissions that can be avoided. First of all, one thing for sure is they need to focus on the student that's in front of them, right? And the students need to know, not starting in April when the auditors are about to arrive. This should have been something like from the beginning of the year, that the cashiers really are the point of implementation of our offer versus serve. Because when it gets to the cashier, that's the last point in which someone is checking to see if that tray is complete. the servers need to help along the way by, encouraging the students to take what they need and so on, but the cashier is the last person. And what they cannot do, when they observe the tray, they need to really understand what an offer versus serve reimbursable meal has to contain, right? So what must it contain at lunch? What is like a non-negotiable, one item, go ahead.
Fruit or juice.
Fruit or
Choose.
vegetable, fruit or vegetable, right? Okay. And how about at breakfast? Fruit and juice are interchangeable things, right? We don't offer vegetable at breakfast time, but they have to have at least that on the tray. So maybe any of those that you think are not in the 70% or better accuracy, you need to go over this with them more. Now's the time. Where quiz them, meet with them quickly and say, let's talk about it, let's keep reinforcing, because the problem is that sometimes when people have been at a job for a long period of time, they become embarrassed to ask a question that they think, by asking it, they're giving away the fact that they don't know as much as they should already know.
Right.
Okay? Adults, we feel bad that way. Because I've been in the job long enough to ask someone else, is this okay? Did I understand it correctly? Because they feel like, I should have known this already. Make them feel comfortable in asking you questions, please. Tell them that, we're all in a busy world where a lot of things have to be retained in our mind, and it's okay to be unsure, please ask. So that's the last point in which that we have the opportunity to make sure that no meal goes by that's not a reimbursable meal. Now, what do they do sometimes when it's not a reimbursable meal? What is the wrong thing to do?
Tell them to get a milk.
Telling the student to get something.
That's one. And what's another thing?
Put something on their tray, please.
Right, force them to take or put it on there for them.
Items.
Or, what'd you say? Say it louder.
Ghost items.
Ghost items. Those invisible floating past you items. Not on the tray, but it takes care of their immediate problem, doesn't it? Okay? Now, that is something that you have to tell them absolutely not. The auditors, for those of you that have been subjected to this before, explain to those that haven't, explain to the cashiers, they're going to stand and observe what's happening. And they're looking to see, does any meal go by that doesn't contain all the components? The last time that we had the AR, we really did fantastic in that category, except they spotted, now, of all the meals that they observed in 25 schools, they spotted one that went by not reimbursable. It was at a high school. High schools serve a lot of meals. The more you serve, the more apt you are to have a problem with a meal. It's still a very low percentage, but don't think that they overlooked it. They didn't. They made a note on their final document saying, at such and such a school, one meal passed us that was not reimbursable. Okay, so we want to aim for the cashiers knowing it, enforcing it with the students if they haven't already been from now. Because what will a student do when they reach the cashier if the ongoing working with the students has not taken place? What do you think will happen on the day of the audit when the auditor is watching, and on that day the cashier says, oh sweetheart, yes, you did not take your fruit or juice, which would you like? What do you think the student that's never had to do that before?
You
What do they say?
You ain't never tell me this before?
What? Say what? Okay. I eat lunch here every day, and I always come to you.
Yeah.
I always come to you. You never told me that before. Why? I don't want to. I don't want it. You know I don't want it, and I never take it. Kids are the most honest,
embarrassing.
and they are very vocal. Like all of you were quiet, now I'm glad you're beginning to talk. Kids will not stop, right? Okay, so you've got to make sure that all that is happening now. If it hasn't been, you need to be out on the line. You need to be observing this cashier and the other one and see how the servers are also working with the students as they go along. Let's not leave it all up to the cashier at the end,
Right.
because that's a lot to end up on the cashier's shoulders. So everyone along the way can help, all right? So please make sure that that is happening. So first of all, you have to make sure that your serving line contains all the food components that are needed. so that the students have enough choice, so that hopefully it's not a struggle with the majority of them, right? And it has to be through the entire serving period, okay? I heard one manager say that their principal, now they don't do this anymore, but the principal used to tell them that with the younger kids that were coming by, don't put that many choices because, you know, they don't know. The more you give them choices, the less they know what they want, and it takes too long, and so don't do that. Well, do we follow that directive?
No.
The principle is not our DOA manual or USDA requirement, right? So they don't know why it is that we have to do all the things that we do, but you are the professional, so you need to make sure that you're implementing it the way it should be. The entire serving period, all the options have to be there. The students' trays, these are things, you can review this, we'll have this PowerPoint up for you to access if you want to have, in addition to those webinars, if you have time on a day that you want to review, you know, a couple of the screens. It's not like show them the whole presentation, but you might want to just review a couple of the screens with them. And then the other part of the meal accountability, besides the trays containing the right items or number of components, is that our paperwork has to prove that what we did, because they're only going to observe one day at each of your schools, right? But they don't want to know that you did things right one day. The day they're there, obviously, that's when things happen the best, right? They want to know that that's what's happening all the time. So, all the paperwork that you're responsible for completing, which includes the production and menu records, the storeroom issue, following the menus, referring to recipes so everyone is following the standardized recipes, preparing everything the same way, vendor invoices, because all that put together, it documents that you had the food required to meet the district menu and to serve the number of meals that we claimed from the government, right? We claim money. You all know, how do we sustain ourselves? How does the department sustain ourselves? Does the district give us money every month to operate?
No.
Does anyone think they do?
No.
No, none, not a penny,
Not
right?
$1.
If anything, we give back to the district because we contribute toward paying for a lot of expenses, electricity and all different things that we pay for, right? In addition to paying for the maintenance of the equipment, the repairs, and so on and so forth. Little by little, we've been paying more and more. So we need to treat everything like our own personal business. And the government, they're the ones, the federal government gives us money. They don't give it to us ahead of time. We have to serve the meals first, have the right documentation to prove that we did right by our students. We offered them everything they were supposed to be offered in the variety, the nutritional areas that were met, because these menus are submitted at the beginning, before the school year even begins. Our district menus have to be submitted for their approval. They analyze it to make sure it has all the nutritional requirements, that the meal pattern is being followed, and so on and so forth. Those are approved. That's why each school cannot choose to serve what they would like to serve on any given day based on, you know, what the mood of the cook was. You know, whatever, oh, I don't really feel like cooking a hot meal today, you know. You know, we cannot. We have to go by the district menu, right? So all these documents together, they work like pieces of a well-put-together puzzle that it gives the auditors, when they're not even here yet, probably in the next couple of weeks, they're going to start asking for more and more of the documents, right? Tomorrow is what day? What day is tomorrow? February 1st. What month of documents are they going to review from your schools? What? February. So, starting today, your leftovers that are today need to be put on tomorrow's production records. So today's records need to be correctly filled out, finalized, so that you know exactly what you need to add to the overlay for tomorrow. And each day links on with the next day, right? So we are going to have to supply all those documents to the auditors. We need to make sure that they are accurate. Let me go on to the next. So are all menu items for the day on the overlay, including leftovers? Like I said, you have to, from today, pass them to tomorrow, and that keeps happening every day. Now, production records. how many of you have been here as managers more than 10 years? Anyone? No one?
Yeah.
Okay, you were? Okay, how about an assistant manager or a
Assistant
satellite
manager.
assistant, more than 10 years?
More than years.
Okay, more than 10 years, way more for me. All right, so, for those of you who've been here longer than that, you know that production records used to be all manual.
Manual.
Manual documents, you had to do
Yes,
a lot
of work.
of work, right?
Yes.
Yes, a lot of work, a lot of writing. Even though it's a tedious thing that has to be done, even in today's world, it is much easier
On
than what had
computer.
to be done. Right, wasn't it?
It's easier on a computer than it was when you're writing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Could you please write that so that when I retire, they will have something nice to say that I worked on, the production records? Because everyone always goes, oh, that's the lady with the
It's
production records.
easier now than it was then.
Okay, yes, I am the lady with the production records.
Yes.
However, it's better than before. Thank you
Yes,
very
it-
much for saying that, remember? Remember that? Okay. All right, 3.5 years,
This is
I'm
being
retired,
recorded anyway.
so please, yes, replay this on my retirement. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so, the production records have to be finalized as you go. You cannot wait 2 and 3 days or more, because I cannot barely remember from yesterday what I had for lunch, right? And if I had to remember everything that I was put out on a line, and the quantities and so on and so forth, that's impossible. We cannot say that we have this memory magic, that everything we see in here just gets recorded and days later we can just put it out on a paper and it's gonna be accurate. It's just not possible.
It's not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen, exactly. So please keep up with it so that the task seems easier. It seems easier if you keep up with it, okay? Now, with the overlay, the other class, it didn't happen to me this time, thank goodness, but when we had the training last week, it goes right in line with saying, please prepare things ahead of time. Do not wait for the morning of to do your overlay because unforeseen things can happen. Thankfully, our presentation was totally done. Our PowerPoint, Patty and I had stayed nice and late getting the final touches on it. Because the morning of the training last week, that I had set my alarm like an hour earlier than normal to be here super early to put it on and you just see it scrolling on there perfectly. That was the one day that my retired husband failed to properly put the alarm clock. It's his responsibility. He has to have some responsibility, right? Okay, so that's it. And when I heard him say, honey, it's 7:12, I thought that I would kill him right then and there. I jumped out of that bed and I literally was out of the house in 6 minutes, okay? I do not get put together in 6 minutes, I can tell you that. 6 minutes, because I had to make it here on time, and thank God it was no later than that. I did make it on time, but my heart was pounding and I was, a nervous wreck. Things happen, unforeseen. If the overlay is not accurate, what's going to happen is that your cashiers are gonna have even greater percentage of errors, and then it's not even their fault.
Right.
Because if there's items missing on there, or if items were left on there that don't even belong because you're not serving them, you're only contributing to the possibility of having mistakes. So please make sure that you review it the day before. Final touches can be done in the morning, but you don't leave the whole task for them. Okay. So again, that's the ghost item that we constantly have to remind them, please, to stay away from adding anything just to get by. What we have to do is try to please the students. So have the options available and explain it to the students as we go along. Be on your serving lines, observing what's happening. All right, so what do we do in the event of a power outage? Okay, what has to happen? What do you do at your schools if you have a power outage? Anything? What? No, one of the managers, tell me what you do. You haven't had one, what would you do?
I got that answer there.
You got that
So
answer.
basically-
Did Luann whisper in your ear? No.
No, we got it all now, we got it.
Okay, you got
We worked it out,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, you
So
tell me.
what we'll do is divide, have 2 lines.
Okay.
So we'll divide one line like A through K, and then the other line will remain the K through Z.
Right, because since your students are not, I mean, they're older students.
Yes,
So they are not, they don't come to lunch within their homeroom group.
no.
So that's why it has to be done alphabetical. That can be done even in a larger high school. When I prepared, not the last audit, but the one before, when it was called CRE, and I prepared one of our large high schools, and we had databases divided like for 5
schools.
serving lines,
Yeah, I remember saying that.
right?
And they will ask you.
Yeah.
Right,
They will
because
ask
even if
what
there
your
is
plan
no
is.
power outage that day, hopefully, we do not have anywhere a power outage, but they wanna know, what would you do? Are you prepared? Right? Because everything is a matter of planning and being prepared. Hopefully you don't have to resort to those more difficult ways of accountability, more cumbersome. But you divide, so in that case, if it's a larger high school, Miami Springs, senior, you have to have it divided into as many serving lines as you would have open in a power outage. And then the administration needs to know that that's what the arrangement is, because a power outage can happen, you know, minutes before lunch is starting, right? So you can't then start scrambling. And we had pre-printed signs to put over each of the entrance areas of the registers or the serving lines, telling them if you're from A to F, your last name, or G to whatever, you're prepared. Yes, it is cumbersome, but you're prepared and it can be handled. Now, for the others, the elementary schools, that you do it then by homeroom, obviously, because that's the way the kids come to by classroom, right? Classroom numbers. And so they always come, or should always come, organized to either, you know, serving line A or B or 1 or 2, whichever. They know which ones they come in, and that's how the flow has to be handled. So you just divide the rosters amongst those 2 cashiers, and then they're ready, and they put them in the order in which the students are supposed to come to lunch. And so you can handle it. So even though we hopefully never will have to do that during an audit, that is the method. We always have to have backup plans to have point of service systems in place, right? And so we have had occasions when it has been at a very large high school, not possible to do it that way, and we do use then counts from a prior day. The help desk would get involved with helping you with the CRCRs and whatnot. But the procedure to follow with power outage is that. Okay. So now, again, talking about production records. They're scrutinized. They want to see that you have not only the information of what you did serve, but also what goes on the left-hand side of the production record. What, huh? What, on the left? On the left side, what you plan to serve, right? Not what actually happened, but what you planned ahead of time, just like you have portions planned that you have to do ahead of time, and you have to finalize your grocery orders ahead of time. That's the planning part. So that gives a good structure for what you need to do on the day of serving. So they want to see that the planning numbers are there on all production records, including snack production records. And that the records document that the food prepared had enough items altogether to serve the number of meals that we claimed. And a little later I'll go through how that happens. One thing, I want to say it now and I will repeat it again and you'll hear it from other people too. On the production records, besides entering all the different fields, the information requested for each field, the numerical information, you have to put comments like, we have a special day happening this week that will likely affect our meal participation.
Bring your child to school.
Exactly, right? February 2nd, Thursday, we have Take Your Child to Work Day. At a lot of the schools the students in attendance are way low.
Right.
Therefore, of course, our meal participation is affected. Anything that affects your meal participation like that, it could be field trips, it could be, for everyone, it's going to be Take Your Child to Work Day. Please make sure that in the comments that you put something like participation was lower or decreased participation due to Take Your Child to Work Day. Okay? That way, not only they look at the numbers when they're reviewing the production records, but also they're going to look at the meals claimed versus what you have in your records, the numbers served, to see that everything jives. And when they see an entire month, like the entire month of February, they're gonna look at those records, and then they're gonna see on your records, you know, they were serving, let's just say, 600, 620, 599, and now all of a sudden, 200. whoa, what happened? Did you forget to prepare food for the kids and you couldn't feed them all? What happened? So we need to have comments that will explain that. If you have a problem with a computer and later they're not able to regenerate everything and your count looks low, you need to explain that. Okay, we did have a situation 2 audits ago where there was a problem at breakfast time, that the numbers just were so out of whack from what their normal was. And they hadn't put any comments, and so they're like, oh my gosh, what happened? No one remembers. Thankfully, the manager found a document in which her computer that morning was being swapped out, and it created a problem with the counts that were not reflected on her day-end documents. She found that outgoing control form, that's what saved it, because they were leaving it as you have a major discrepancy in your counts. So that's what I'm saying, put a comment that will alleviate from, you know, any further questioning as to what happened on that day, okay? Okay, so now we're on our CRCRs completed, submitted, and according to procedure. Okay, what are different times when you have to do a CRCR?
Forget to put in your aftercare.
What's that?
Forget to put in your aftercare.
Okay, yes, that could be. Cashier's short or over. Either way, the
Yeah,
discrepancy is $10, right?
You have a field tree and you don't pass the correct students go to the
Okay,
field.
you have to make adjustments in those counts, right? Things like that. Okay, now, how quickly do CRCRs need to be put in?
Discover the discrepancy.
Immediate, right now. If you discovered it now, now. And if you need help, the help desk can always help you figure out what is the correct thing to enter in the CRCR, okay? We can't avoid CRCRs altogether, but they need to be input quickly. One of the reasons is that they won't, if you input them quickly, then those changes will populate onto your production records. But if you lag and 3 weeks later, it's input, that is never gonna be reflected on your production records, okay? Because the records, what they do is they go through the entire file of the whole district to update. It's not like they can just pinpoint because you input your aftercare late, let's just redo your aftercare. No, it does a regenerate all over around, So to capture everyone's CRCRs, they only do it up until a few days past the serving date. And then that's it, because it would require, a room full of computers to handle food service if they were doing it, for weeks past. So that's the way it happens. So please make sure that as soon as you realize it, and the help desk, they're always great at providing you with assistance, figuring it out with you if you have a problem. Your supervisor can help you as well, and so on. Okay, so is follow-up conducted and documentation provided whenever the analysis of meals served exceeding report is generated? Okay, of those of you present, do you receive analysis of meals served worksheets? Somebody said yes? You do, okay? On a regular basis, you get them?
Yeah,
Right, okay, that doesn't mean that something is being done incorrectly,
I know.
right? But for those of you that don't, so you don't say, oh my gosh, you did and I don't. No, it just means that you, of the number of free students that you have at your school, you are feeding a higher percentage of those than what the assumed attendance factor is. Oh, you know it.
Yeah.
You know it, you can teach this part. Okay, so it's actually kind of like a, wait, thumbs up to you, because first of all, your school has better attendance record than the state is assuming that you would have. And of those students, you're feeding a lot of them. They like your food, they're going in there, okay? But we need to provide the documentation that shows it supports the fact that it's only because you're serving a high percentage. So those of you and there's 20 schools altogether out of the 25 that receive these records on an ongoing basis, these reports. So it's very important that that be kept up with. Even if you don't, listen up, because they're gonna ask the question to you, and the auditors usually are not gonna use our lingo of saying analysis of meals served. They're gonna say, do you do edit checks?
Yeah.
Okay, so make a note that that's what they call it, edit checks.
Edit check.
Now, even though you do not have that situation that you get the report, doesn't mean that your school is not subjected to the edit check being done. The edit check is being done automatically. That's why these analysis of meals served reports are generated, because all of the schools are being analyzed by this program that is looking to see how many students you fed every single day within each category, free, reduced, paid, to see if it may be that you're overfeeding, that you have by mistake fed more than what you were eligible to have fed. So every school is being checked automatically by our program. And then the report is issued only to those schools that need to go and research a little further to prove that it's only because you're serving a great percentage of your students, right? So everyone needs to be aware. If they say, our edit check's done for your school, or our district does it for all schools, however, I have not been receiving this year any reports indicating that I may have served more than we're eligible to serve, okay? So that's all you need to know if you're not one of those schools. And see, that was the list, all the schools that do receive it, and like I said, there's 20, only 5 that don't. So that's why this is something important. We reviewed it in more detail with the other group because a great percentage of them are subject to it. Now, you know how to complete, Sonia, you know how to complete the worksheet?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, all right, so if, I won't go over it because the others I have not had completed.
Teresa, you have to complete it, right?
Every month,
Oh, I didn't hear you say that you had them also.
every month.
Okay,
My kids come in meetings on room.
really?
Well, mine coming late, and don't, yeah, mine coming late and don't get,
Attendance.
marked, absent or, time.
Okay, so
So-
for everyone, it is very important that you always make sure that the attendance bulletin that you have is not the initial one, because they have a time frame by
To do
which
one, yeah.
they give you an initial, or they print
They got-
the initial attendance
Right.
bulletin.
You've gotten it too, Sabrina, right? Or no? You've never gotten the report? No?
No? Okay, so the initial attendance bulletin is going to miss the
Right.
what actually happened in the day, because kids that arrived late are showing as absent and so on. So you need to make sure that you have the final attendance bulletin to
And
take
that's what
care of
yeah,
those
they take care of,
stragglers that came in, so it'll show that they were in attendance, okay? And if you need
I'll let you
any
know.
assistance or questions,
To help them.
anyone that starts, you know, your supervisors know how to complete it, the help desk can assist with that, and so on. And that's something that has to be done, like you said, you receive it monthly, you go through it, so provide the documentation, and you're good to go, right? And that is the
All the-
worksheet with, it's got also the instructions right on it for anyone that
All
wants
the
to
documentation.
see what the others are having to do, you can take a look at that. Okay. So, now we're on page 3. Does the school follow the district-wide menu? Are substitutions documented? How important is it that you follow the menu? Critical, right? If you don't follow the menu, your school will not meet the nutritional requirements. You can't, even on, let's say, what's on line 9 of our district menu? What appears on line 9? Hint, it's a vegetable. Line 9 has the vegetable of the day, right? The vegetable of the day is super important because what appears on line 9 for the whole week, all of it together, is what we need to meet the weekly requirement of our vegetables. As you know, vegetables fall into different categories, right? We've got the red and orange, the dark green, the starchy, and so on. So the way that the district menu is determined is so that if the schools serve the exact vegetable that appears on line 9, and you serve your romaine, the side salads, right? If you're doing that, definitely you're gonna meet the vegetable requirement, the balance needed for the week, right? So if you start the day with the red-orange vegetable on your line, that's the vegetable of the day. You've got to have that red-orange available throughout the day. You can't change that vegetable when if it runs out, to a different category of vegetable. Okay, you try to have that particular one for the whole serving day. If something happens one day that amount that you had made of that one vegetable runs out and you don't have enough to bring out of the same one, you've got to make sure that you bring out of the same category, right? The same subgroup. So you've got to make sure of that. And again, if you have any situation where you're not serving the district menu, what do you need to do? You're not serving the district menu for a reason. Give me a reason maybe that you would not have served the district menu. It didn't, a freezer went down, right? You lost the food.
Yeah.
What we go happen this week, the corn don't come to the
Yeah,
school.
never came.
We
Right.
need change for any starch unreadable, no.
Exactly. You got the email yesterday
Yes.
afternoon, right? About the fresh corn that the produce company is not delivering, not able to deliver it. If you have frozen or canned corn, that's the preference, that's what you're gonna serve. And that is for which day? Tomorrow. Isn't it tomorrow? Right, when you were supposed to serve it? So, you have to, all of you, and we're gonna be following up with the other 20 schools, to make sure that you have, since you don't have the fresh one, that you have, if you don't have canned or frozen, then we've gotta get another starchy vegetable, and in that same email, it gave you examples of the other starchy vegetables that you could use. Please look at it, if you have those other starchy vegetables, that's what you'll serve tomorrow. If you don't, when you go back to your schools, take a look, if you don't, neighboring school that you could get the vegetable from, call here, whatever we need to do to make sure that tomorrow you do have the starchy vegetable on your menu, okay? And you will put in the comment that because your district menu form says the fresh corn, but then you'll have printed, please print that email from Susan, and keep it, attach it, so it shows that a substitution was known by the district that it had to take place because the vendor didn't supply it, okay? Other substitutions, like you said, if the freezer goes down, so you lost your food, our first attempt always, if there's time, is to obtain the same food items from a neighboring school.
Right.
If not, then you have to serve something else, but it has to meet our meal pattern. Get someone else to help work with you, your supervisor, to see what they can help you to get from a neighboring school, whatnot. Everyone is here to help the managers. And the managers to serve the students. We're all in it together, right? So get help if you need to, just so that we make sure that we are serving what is needed. Excuse me a minute. Okay. And always document any changes, right? Okay, if it was a substitution that your coordinator, supervisor approved for you, put that, or if it's a district substitution, please put that as well, okay? Because it must meet the daily, weekly meal patterns. Some things are looked at just what it contributes to the day of meal service, but like in the case of the vegetables, it's how does it fit into the full week's requirement? So that's why it's important that we keep up with what is on the district menu. And like we said, the vegetable subgroups, whole grain requirements must be met by the week as well. Okay, so here we have, I think you have in your folders, take a look there, the February 6th, you have there the menus. Okay, you have a full packet of menus, and we want you to make sure that this packet is what you use, and anything that you had printed from when the menus were first sent by email, discard those, use these instead. If we have any other revisions necessary, like changing, like from Tuesday to Thursday, if something has to be swapped, different things that could take place, we will provide you with, again, a revised menu for you to put in place of what you have now for your audit documents, okay? So, one thing that I want to mention is, first of all, grab and go. How many of you are using grab and go bags at your serving lines? Yes? No? Over here, anyone else?
Yes.
Yes? No? Okay, and? No. All right. We must have grab and goes on the line. One thing, they're on the menu, but that's not why. They're on the menu because we are required to have them as another means of reaching out to students that maybe have to come through fast on the run because they either have to meet up with a teacher maybe, that the teacher said, be here before such and such a time, and I know in the case of high school, sometimes they'll administer a quiz that they missed, or they'll, different reasons, right? Or they're arriving late, and they only have like 2 minutes before the bell's gonna ring, and at least they can have breakfast. We do need to have grab and goes inside. Now, any grab and goes on the outside, that's above and beyond, that's great at the schools, maybe high schools or large campuses or whatnot, that the cafeteria might be remotely located as compared to where the kids come in or where they tend to gather or whatnot. So if you have it, grab and go carts or whatnot, that is excellent because that can improve your numbers. But we must at least have them on the line. The recipe numbers of the grab and goes on the line, as well as the ones outside, have been revised so that we don't have so many different recipe numbers. So you're going to get specific information as to the recipe numbers that need to appear on your overlay. In fact, I think even today,
I was gonna
the
say, I
help
think,
desk
yeah, the help desk
is
should be calling you.
contacting each of the
This
schools.
morning.
They did already.
Outside, inside.
Right.
Perfect, okay? They're helping each one of the audit schools, you get extra help above what the others, because we're, focusing on you first, to make sure that you have the most up-to-date recipe numbers being used, and that they're going to be on your fixed overlay and so on, so that it's not something that you're subjected every day to have to correct on your overlay, okay? So that's something
So
that,
it's only outside, inside, forget about the rest.
what are the rest? We have recipes for those that you're gonna serve inside on your line,
Yes.
and then there will be recipes for the ones you serve outside. But we used to have like, how many recipes, was it 16?
22.
22? Maybe you weren't using them all, but,
Only 5, but the thing is, now they don't exist, it's either outside or inside.
There are 2 for
Right.
inside and 2 for outside.
yes.
Okay, but you use those instead of the main.
Instead of, if they're not the same numbers, we selected 4 existing recipe numbers. We didn't create like a new number, we selected 4 of the currently existing and revised what the recipe says in it, so that you would only have a total of 4 recipes to have to work with.
Are we gonna eliminate the other ones out of the system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Two of the recipes are those used inside, okay, like, the reason we have to have 2 is because at breakfast, the student can have 2 bread or a meat and a bread, right? So we had to have 2 recipes to reflect the fact that the bag could be 2 breads or a meat and a bread, okay? And the same thing for the outside carts, there's two recipes to be used as well, okay? So we'll give you further information, we'll, provide you with the specifics, and the help desk is already assisting the 25 schools in making sure that your overlay has the current information, right? Also, the other things that were revised were in the grain, wasn't it, Luann? For the
February menus?
For the February menus?
Yes.
The portion for like the secondaries and the high schools,
For
like if
secondary.
there
Rice
was a
and
biscuit for
biscuits.
the high school, it had to be 2 biscuits, and the rice portion was, a cup, right?
Full cup,
A
2
full
no
cup,
rice.
a full cup, right.
Right. So again, there will be details given to you to make sure that you look at those recipes, because they are being corrected. The wording in them is being corrected to make sure that it's reflecting the correct amount of grains. And so you'll have to share that with your cooks so that they know what quantity to make. And also you've gotta have that information in case you need to add to your grocery orders or whatnot, because if you don't have enough of the items on hand for the new serving size. So that's the secondary. Okay? Any questions? No? Now, the thing is with the district menu, or even, let's say this Thursday, the 2nd, that we have Take Your Child to Work Day. You know you're gonna have a lesser participation, but that doesn't mean that you cut out the preparation of some of the district menu items. All it means is that you make less of them, a smaller quantity. Use half pans and whatnot to present it on your line. But you always have to offer everything that's on the district menu, and then you know you can always have enhancements, things that you know that are good sellers or that whatnot that attracts the students, and you can add them. But you just cannot omit things that are on the menu. Okay, so that's the lunch menu. All right, number 2. Is the offer versus serve poster visible to students near the serving line?
Yes.
Okay, that's the new one. If you have any offer versus serve poster still up that's not that one, please remove those. If you need additional ones, we have others that we can give to you. If you have points of service where they cannot currently see the new offer versus serve sign, okay? And is the Injustice for All poster visible to students in all areas where reimbursable meals are served? Reimbursable, of course, they have to see it from the serving lines, but reimbursable meals include if there's a special ed class or pre-K class or that eat in the classroom, right? This poster, the poster has to be up. The Injustice for All poster has to be up. Now, how about field trips? Is that a reimbursable meal?
Yes.
Definitely, right?
Yes.
How about the poster?
Yes.
Has to go with them,
He has to go with him.
right?
Sure do.
So, I know that you'll probably get some cross-eyed looks from whoever you are handing the poster to, but you must give them the poster. It is supposed to be up and visible wherever a reimbursable meal is served. Okay? Whatever they do when they're out on the field trip, you're not there to see it, but you have to provide it, right?
That's it.
That's it. So,
That's
and,
it.
and even if you don't have a field trip in the week of the audit, all these things are subject to being asked of you.
Yes.
What do you provide, do you ever serve field trip meals? And you say, yes, I don't have any this week. What do you do when it's a field trip meal? Well, you make sure that you have all the components, right? You have the meal includes all the components, including, what happens with the milk? What happens with the milk on a field trip? Right? Are the students supposed to get a choice of which milk they want?
Yes.
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 Right. It's a yes.
Yes.
It's a yes. So if it's, some cases, they actually ask the students, let's say it's one class,
And they
how many
add
are
some-
going to want this kind of milk or that, and they jot
Chart
it down
down the
for you.
paper.
Right, give me 15 of this and 10 of that, and that's what you do. So the students are getting a choice of
The
the
milk.
type of milk, whether it's, now milk, remember, the choices are, not that they have to have a flavored and an unflavored. The choice is that they have to have what? A choice of 2 fat contents. Because we had one school in the other group that the principal was not allowing chocolate milk. But that doesn't mean that we're not meeting the DOA requirements, because they just have to have the skim milk and the, 2 fat content choices, and then you're still meeting, all right? Let's see. We're on question 4 now. Is the manager aware of procedures for dealing with complaints of alleged discrimination? And like Patty said, everyone that was at the opening of school meeting heard and saw the presentation on civil rights. So that's a yes, you are aware. And if you were not there, then when your manager did the presentation for the part-time and the rest of the staff, then you would have heard it at that time. Everyone, please make sure that the roster that you got everyone to sign when you provided the training to them, if from that point to now you have hired someone new, someone has transferred to your school, that you have someone present that works now for you that wasn't there in August when you did the training. Make sure if they have not received the training, that you give them the training and they sign it. If they were trained at the other school that they were at, that you confirm with a manager that that person's signature is on their roster as well, have them sign your roster. That way, and if they didn't for some reason get trained, you're gonna give them the training and have them sign. We need to make sure that everyone has that training. A super important thing is that we have to, part of this civil rights compliance is avoiding overt, what? Identification. And what does that mean in terms of the student? What can we not allow anyone to do of our staff? What would be overtly identifying?
Saying that they're free, reduced, or full pay.
Right, in front of others,
Right.
right? So sometimes people, no one does it with the, ill intention.
Yeah.
But if they see the cashier struggling to see if the student has a balance, or if they, whatever, someone else that knows, well, maybe the student usually goes on the other line, might say to that cashier, don't worry, they're free.
Yeah.
So they're not doing it, maliciously or anything, but that is not acceptable, right? So we have to make sure that things of that nature are always maintained confidential, private, nothing is said out loud. You have to have on file any special dietary needs of students where you are actually preparing something, giving them something a little different, or it has to be textured or whatnot. You have to have a diet prescription on file from this school year that specifies what the student can eat, okay, or cannot. There's the procedure. G13 is the procedure for civil rights compliance. So you could go through that. And attachment D is the actual form that if you, well, I know that you all said you're not aware of any discrimination, but if it were to take place, that you become aware that someone is alleging that, you can provide them with the form that you can get right through our procedure manual, and you provide them the form so that they can fill out everything there, and you have to immediately, when you hear of any alleged discrimination that they're telling you, someone is telling you about it, you've got to inform your administrator, your principal, and tell your region supervisor so that our office is aware, because we have to communicate promptly that information, and we need that document to be able to inform the USDA of any alleged discrimination. Okay? 6, and do all employees know the alternate meal plan policy for students without money? Okay, what is the alternate meal policy at your school?
Turkey and cheese, and she said juice or milk for them, for my kids.
Okay, turkey, cheese,
Juice.
and juice, okay, fine. Same thing? Okay, okay. And so you all have, the principals at the beginning of the year, they had to submit what their alternate meal plan policy was. And in some cases, they do their part of, providing it to us, but they may or may not be clear to inform the managers and therefore so that your staff is aware. So if anyone you think doesn't know what the policy is, obviously you all do know what your principal's chosen policy is, but share it if you think that anyone might be unsure about that. Now, one thing for sure is that we are not going to do, if a student is already at the line and they have their tray, we will not take the tray from the student, okay? In the elementary level, it's supposed to be theoretically how it's supposed to work is, first of all, you do have to provide the notice, print out the notice of students that are in a negative balance and provide that so it can be distributed in the homeroom, and so the parents can find out that they need, that the child needs money or they're already, owed X amount of money. And following from there, the teacher who is aware, because they're given the balance report, right, of any children that are in a negative, are supposed to help us by bringing the student, kind of directing them to go to the manager, so that the student doesn't get in line, already gets the tray, and, when they really are not supposed to. But if they do get in line and they've got that tray, we are not taking the tray
Away from them, right?
So that is not gonna happen. So just remember that someone asked in the other class, well, we are following the policy and they're supposed to be paying us for it, and we haven't gotten payment. We've given the invoice to the principal or the assistant principal, and we haven't gotten payment. Are we going to be in trouble for that? No. You do your part. You continue to give them the invoice. You keep a file with, what has or hasn't been paid. You have all the documentation. You can remind them, because people do forget, or they think, when we have enough funds, we're gonna do it, or whatever, and they might forget. So you can remind them, and if, make a note on your copy, or give them again a copy of the invoice. So you do your part, and hopefully they will be paying for it. Okay? And that is, of course, the elementaries are allowed to go into the negative for 5 days, as you know that, all right? So, and that's just the procedure for advising the students, the parents, and whatnot.
Quick
Okay.
question for you.
Yes,
For example, with me, I have kids that they're negative, but when my cashier send them to me, they actually show me their balance on the phone from the parents making a payment overnight,
like pay
and they
parents.
already have the trade. So when I explain to them that, even though your parent may pay on a Tuesday, I can't see it until like Thursday or Friday. What do you do about a situation like that if it's an audit? And the kid know they have money, but their account is showing different from the overnight transaction.
Okay, you mean that they've already gone to past 5 days? Oh, well, yours
No,
are older.
yeah,
Your kids are
I'm
older.
6 and 12, so I
Your
can't
kids
do
are
it.
older, so you don't have that, right?
Right.
Because you don't have that 5 day.
Right.
Well, you can, and in your office, okay, this is not something that you do just freely, but in your office, you can go in and put the account into negative status. It can't be rung up on the serving line that way,
Right.
but you can do an adjustment
Yeah.
in your computer.
'Cause they
So that it
really
shows
should
that the
like
child
anyway.
ate.
I would also suggest you call Pedro Freitas, if you can get a hold of him, and he can sometimes go in and push it through. I mean, if
Push
they
the
made the
bacon.
deposit on Tuesday, it should be showing by Thursday, for sure.
But like, for example,
But
they.
she's saying, like Tuesday,
But
now it's
Tuesday,
Wednesday.
right, it won't be right there when they
Sometimes
come in that
Wednesday,
morning.
even.
Right.
If he can go in and see it in pay Pam, sometimes, I mean, in the past, he's done that.
Right.
So,
That's a big
I mean,
problem.
the thing is, of course, we don't control pay payments, right, because that's an outside.
And that's just like, some of my
service.
elementary kids, mom does the same thing, and they, child come the next day and the money, they say they paid, but the money's not there either.
Right,
Through
and I
pay
think,
pam,
I mean, it
yes.
even says that it takes a couple
Yeah, it
days
takes a
to
couple days,
process
but
and
yeah,
all that.
so that's why I told
But,
them.
right, I mean,
Yeah.
so, like Luann says, if you're able
Right.
to reach
That's
Pedro
what I
and
said
he
too.
is able to get it, pushed through instead of waiting for the normal process, fine. If not, you can,
Go
do
in
an
and
adjustment
adjust
into
it,
the
so, yeah.
account to put it in the negative, so that when the payment comes in,
It goes.
and you put a comment as to your adjustment, right? So when the payment comes in, it will have paid for that amount that they owed.
It adjusts.
Right, okay. All right, so number 7, do servers, cashiers, teachers allow all students to choose menu items and not require them to take them? So they have to be able to choose, and even the little kids, because sometimes they'll say, oh, they're too little, they don't know. Well, they've got to start knowing somewhere, right? And at least, it might help them if it's a young child, if you just say, okay, from all of that, what do you want? Sometimes you have to kind of focus in for them.
Which one you want?
Which one of these two would you like,
Yeah.
whatever the entrees are, which one of these, you have to baby them along at first, and then they become savvy and they're good at it,
Yeah.
and they learn faster than we would learn something new. So, we just have to make sure that they have the choice, okay? Does food service staff avoid pre-plating? Do we have any
Yes.
problems with pre-plating still happening? I hope not.
No.
No, I hope not. Definitely, way gone are the days that you see, several, many
plates
plates
going
at the
across.
top. I mean, we were, like lining the horizon in served plates.
Get a plate. Let's
Some
go.
administrators want to impose that because they think that, especially it's a real busy school, high population, they think it's gonna make it faster.
Yeah, it's
No,
not.
because they still, the slowing down point is the register and the verbal identifier in that process. It doesn't help the line one bit, all it does is let the food get cold and fail the audit.
Right.
So that would be the only thing that it would do for us, so. Remember also, again, require about medical documentation, if there's any student with a milk allergy that's documented, that they can get a second juice or whatever, that you have that on file as well. Okay, does site avoid withholding food for disciplinary action? I know that we never do that, you know, you don't stop allowing a student to get something from your serving line because they're not behaving well. But I've seen and heard, you know, supervisors say, even recently in this past year, that a school site, the administration might say, I don't want any of this served because they were not behaving well in the cafeteria. You know, we've got to make sure that the food is not used as a means of punishing anyone, withholding it or any such thing, okay? If you have that problem, let us know, because if it ever comes up, we have to put a stop to that right away. Do all food service staff wear hair restraints? Do they wear properly used and disposed of gloves, change them frequently, and so on? There's all the detail in HACCP to go over regarding that. But the reason why we have highlighted this about the gloves is, in the last audit, it happened to us that a delivery came from produce, and one of our employees promptly, I mean, he was fast and he wanted to get it put away, and you know, that was great. But he finished that and he was handling boxes, of course, and then he forgot. From there, he went to the serving line and he just went straight from one thing to the other, and they saw it happen. So we're bringing that point up in particular because it was written up on the last audit. So please remind, you know, the frequency of disposing, hand washing, new gloves, back and forth, is what we do to make sure that we don't cross-contaminate and that we have a very sanitary food service operation. Okay? Do you observe temperatures being taken during meal service? We're asking if you observe it, because if you don't see it happening, it's not happening, and they are going to be observing the taking of the temperatures, okay? So you have to take temperatures following, Patty's gonna go over later the chart itself, but you know that you have to take temperatures throughout the meal period. When the food first comes to the serving line. In lunches that are long periods of time, you take it again, midway and end of service. There was someone who said our meal service is so quick because they don't have that many students that it's 20 minutes, it's done with, you know, from start to end, and that's it. Well, if there's no time to take in between because it's that, you know, quick, then fine. But anything, but you still have taken when you started and when you ended, and they both have to be. What do you do if the temperature is not hot enough on something? Back in the oven.
Yeah.
And then what would that mean on your HACCP checklist for that week?
Corrective.
All right? You have to have it. Now, so that means that HACCP checklist needs to be on your desk from Monday morning. You can't pull a blank one out on Friday and start filling in for the week. Because yes, it is the one for the whole week, but you have to have it handy to make notes along the way, anything that you corrected. Don't think that it's a bad thing that you've made notes that you found something that wasn't being done wrong. On the contrary, it shows the alertness and the awareness of what's happening in your operation, right? Okay. Do servers, cashiers understand the meal pattern, offer versus serve, correct portion sizes? Everyone should have seen the November and December videos, and those had the meal patterns for breakfast and then those for lunch. If anyone needs, you know, more reiterating, they can look through it again, whatnot. But also, like I said before, make it a comfortable environment for them to ask you questions, so that no one is embarrassed to ask questions just because they don't understand. Okay, now, we have for you these charts. I think you have them printed? No? Okay, but we provided those on the November and December. There were handouts that were given to you in the attachments. so you could print them. And this is something that, for example, this one is for breakfast. It shows the minimum number of portions that could be offered per component, okay? There's minimums, and then there's maximums for breakfast. So just looking at one of them, an example of the maximum for breakfast is if the student chooses not to take a meat item, then they take 2 bread, 1 dairy, and 2 fruit. Okay, that's the maximum. That's one example. Or they took 1 meat, 1 bread, a dairy, and 2 fruit. The fruit, like we said before, has to always be there. If you did not print these for yourselves before, go back into the presentations and print them. The same thing for lunch. Of course, lunch has a lot more combination of minimums, right? But it's pretty simple in the maximums. If you look at what the maximum that the student could select. 1 meat, 1 bread, 1 dairy. In other words, this is the maximum that your POS registers are going to allow to ring up, right?
Show up.
And still not charge the student anything.
Yeah.
This is the maximum. Okay. Still my turn? No, Patty, I think it's your turn almost. Do all students receive the correct portion size? Keep on talking, okay. Do they receive the correct portion size? Does your site have the necessary utensils? Okay, those things work hand in hand. You need the right utensils to be able to serve correctly, right? But also, everyone needs to know what is the proper serving size.
We're gonna continue with the wellness policy, okay? So, number 18 on page 4 is, does the site have the wellness policy posted and readily available? Okay, so you should have the entire wellness policy, right? I think it's like 8 pages. You have that, because you got that at the October 12th meeting, or we had a makeup session, okay? So you should have that, all right, posted. But like I said, since they're going to expect, the auditors like to go to the schools and they don't just want to talk to you all the time. So that's why it's been very important that, Helen's been saying that you need to also inform your staff of things so that they know, because they don't want to just ask you all the questions. They want to make sure that, they are being trained, that then they know what to do in different situations. So with the wellness policy, what we're going to do is, like I said before, we're going to do like a little tipster, just a few points on the wellness policy, because they wouldn't be expected to know all 8 pages of it, okay? So we'll do something for you so that you can have that and you can go over with them that information, okay? About the wellness policy, so we'll take care of the training, that'll take care of the training, okay? And then of course, have their signatures and everything, okay? And then it says here to encourage involvement in school wellness activities. So they get really excited to know if any of your schools have gardens, or if you've done any class on wellness, or if somebody, maybe Audra or Chandler or anybody has gone out to your schools. They really like to know anything that's going on, that they like to, like I said, at the exit conference, when they come, they like to say all these things that they observed and that they see that you guys have going on at your school. So if you have done anything with nutrition, whether it be exercise, maybe I think one of the high schools had like a gym and something like that, just let them know all these things that are nutrition and fitness and things that go on with your school, even if you're not directly, involved in it, because they like to know, okay? Then when we talk about competitive foods, okay? Just like Helen had said, our menus have to be, this is what you wanted me to say, don't worry, I'm just gonna talk about it. Just like our menus are analyzed and everything, we gotta make sure that we don't have competitive foods, okay? All of our things that we sell, or a la carte and stuff, meet what they call the smart snacks, okay? So, but I know a lot of schools, especially last year when we were having our after-school care snack audits, okay? Almost every day when we would go to a school, not me, when Helen or the supervisors would go to the school, I didn't. She would, we would get the call every day. Oh my God, they're selling pizza out here, they're selling this, they're selling that, hurry up, get rid of that, So really important, so that you're not rushed, you need to be aware of what's going on in your school. Are they selling snacks? Are they selling these competitive foods, okay? And if so, please let your supervisor know. I know sometimes it's uncomfortable for you,
you can't stop it, the supervisors may not be able to either, okay? So let us know, let your supervisor know, they'll let us know, we'll tell Ms. Parham, and she will deal with, you know, her superiors and talking with your schools, because they all know that they're not supposed to do this, okay, they can't, all right? But, you know, we don't wanna wait till the last minute to have it stopped, okay? So if you have anything going on in your school, just let us know, okay? Because there is a time constraint, it can't be 1 hour before the start of school or 1 hour after, okay? So that's the rule. If things come through us, then it should be okay, all right? I know some high schools do cooperative sales, they do the bagel sales and that kind of stuff, that's okay. But it's these other things that go on in schools that I think, you know, what we're talking about, correct? The HACCP weekly checklist, okay? Like Helen said, okay, you need to be, have this checklist, you know, out since Monday. It's not something you just whip up on Friday. I know when, I've seen a lot of the checklists, and they're always just checked off, yes, 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 like everything's perfect, okay? And, you know, that's not really what we wanna see, what your supervisors should be seeing, what the auditors wanna see, because that just looks like you took out the paper on Friday, right before you left, you filled it out to just say you did it, right? But that's really not the purpose of it, okay? The purpose of it is, like Helen said, you take it out on Monday, you go checking things, if has to be corrective action, you need to do that. Sometimes the corrective action is, yes, putting it back in the oven to cook. Sometimes it's, you know, training your staff on something that they were doing incorrectly. If it's improper uniform, something like anything, okay, not changing their gloves, whatever. Document that, and again, it's not bad to have things written on there, it just shows that you're actively looking and, you know, you're making corrections to your program, okay? So that's very important, okay? All right. All right, they're gonna, like we said, they're gonna be out there, they're gonna be looking at temperatures, they're also gonna be looking at their personal hygiene, okay? They wanna make sure that all your staff have hairnets, they have gloves, that they're hand washing, thank you, okay? That they have clean uniforms, that cross-contamination is being prevented, okay? That the equipment temperatures are being monitored, like Helen said, they don't wanna just ask you for the form, okay? They're not just gonna ask you for the form to make sure that you do it every day, they wanna, okay, you do that now, what time of the day? Cause they're there the whole day, they're gonna get there at breakfast, and they're gonna stay till day end, okay? So they have plenty of time to be observing your processes and all of that. So they wanna make sure that you are taking time, your staff, to take temperatures, okay? That they are following all these procedures that we say, that we talk about, that they ask you about, okay? All right, so it's not just knowing the right answer, but it's the implementation, okay? Of course, that the areas are pest-free. Hopefully nobody has a problem with pests. Okay, so very important, okay? You know that your food is being stored 6 inches, you know, from the floor, from the ceiling. You know, that your chemicals are stored separately, that they're labeled. Anything that you take out of the original container has to be labeled. Okay, very important. They're gonna, you know, check all these procedures. Right. That was about the temperature logs. Here you go. Here's the temperature logs, okay? Very important, your hot water. We had a situation yesterday, okay? There was, who's supposed to call in the work orders for your department, for your kitchen? Are you supposed to call into the equipment center, or who's supposed to call? Because this is something that happens because of a little bit of miscommunication. Who's supposed to call in the work orders? You call them in, right? You call them in, right? Because if you call them in to the equipment center here, right? You're aware, Tom's aware, our department's aware, right? It's easier. What happened with a school yesterday was that it was called in by the zone mechanic, and we weren't aware that they had no hot water for almost a week okay? A week ago, all right? What happens, they call it in, you know, they didn't go out there till like, it was called in, let's say Tuesday, they didn't go out there till Thursday, you know, maintenance was out there, but they didn't have the part. They said they would go back Friday. Guess who shows up on Friday? A health inspector, right? Because they always, I don't know, they have like an alarm, it's like your parking tickets, just when you run out, the meter guy is there. Okay, so that's them, okay? So what happened, they're out there, they tell them that if they don't have hot water, you need to serve cold sandwiches, okay, the next day, all right? So Monday, so they still couldn't get it repaired on Friday, okay? We don't know, the health department, we didn't get the report, okay, the health department report, so we don't know. Now, yesterday, it's escalated really high up, okay? And, you know, we're being called to ask why, what's going on. Helen doesn't know, I don't know, Tom doesn't know, nobody knows what's going on, and yet, pretty much, the superintendent's office knows that there's no hot water, that the school now, they cannot be serving meals, okay, because they don't have hot water. And even though that's not really true that they can't serve hot water, okay, I mean, that they can't serve food just because
They don't have
they don't have hot water, okay? But you know, sometimes the health department, depending on your inspector, they kind of change
Check.
things along the way, right? But really, bottom line is, it's communication, okay, and that's really one of the, obviously you have to fill out your, you know, your temperature logs, make sure that, you know, that you have hot water, and that your walk-ins and your regions, your milk boxes, everything is at proper temperature. But if it's not, you need to communicate, okay? And it's better to over-communicate. Sometimes Helen knows, I know, the supervisor knows, Tom knows, and sometimes it's a little bit of an overkill and 5 people are dealing with the situation at the same time. But it's better than what happens that we don't know, okay? Because believe it or not, the health department, I don't know, they always know, and they're always gonna show up. They may have not been there for months, but the one day you don't have hot water, that's the day they're gonna show up. So you really need to be on top of it, okay? You really need to make sure that you're, you know, if you're not the person that's taking the temperatures, that you know that you can rely on the person that's doing that they're doing them accurately, because it's the same thing, you know, something else that we were talking about, you know, with the checklist, that it's not just something that we want filled out, that it looks good. I mean, it needs to be reflective of what really is happening. You know, you don't want the same temperature every single day. I mean, sometimes you look at these charts and it's like the same thing, 40 going all the way, every single day, and sometimes for every single
Saturdays
piece
or
of
Monday.
yeah.
Saturdays and Sundays, sometimes
Yeah,
it's
or sometimes people have filled it out.
Holidays.
Holidays, or they filled it out even before the day's begun. You already have tomorrow's already done, you have the whole week's done, okay? No, you can't do that, okay, that's not the purpose. So please make sure that this is being reported accurately, timely, and that you communicate if you have a problem. If we don't know, we can't help you, okay? And we can always, you know, like in the situation yesterday, I mean, within 20 minutes, we were getting food from, you know, the nearest school. So the kids are always gonna get fed, nothing's really ever gonna be that much of a problem if we just know, okay?
Is the food service area, including equipment, clean and sanitary? We've got to make sure that not just what you can see, you know, at a glance, but everything in depth is clean. Open up all the drawers, make sure that there's no things in the drawers that don't belong. We don't want to find partially eaten apples or anything like that in a drawer. We've got to make sure that no one is eating or drinking while they're working, okay? Not even a cup of water should be at your workstation. They can, you know, leave when they need to have something to drink, obviously. You know, someone relieves them for a moment, they go drink something, come back, okay? So please make sure that underneath the, like the tray rails, that you check under there, because that's a great spot for kids to put their chewing gum and things. And so it really gets to looking
In the milk box.
awful. The milk boxes
They
need to be
do.
cleaned daily,
Chips.
these things get dropped in and whatnot. So detailed cleaning is what you need to make sure that everything is kept up to par. Now, regarding the health inspections, we are required by DOA to show them when they come, not only that you have posted, of course, your most recent health inspection has to be posted so that the public could see it, right? Not posted just in your office. In your office, you keep the original, and I would suggest you make a copy of that, which is what's posted, so that the original is never lost. But you have to make sure that you also have 2 health inspections, either from this school year, and if they haven't come twice, then you need to have handy the 2 health inspections from last school year, because they want to see 2 from the same school year, is what they want to see. So take a look afterwards when you're back at your schools to verify, you know, if you do have 2 for this year or not. And also, of course, very important, have the deficiencies that were cited been corrected, addressed first and corrected, okay? So you can make notations as things are corrected. Also remember that even though we haven't brought it up, that there's a log for your work orders. And you're supposed to have posted that log, so whenever you call something in, it may be something just that you noticed or something that's not working, or it could be something that came up on a health inspection report, whichever. If you're calling it in to request a work order, write it on there, because that there is where you're supposed to be checking off when that particular issue, repair, whatnot is taken care of. And you can put the date, so you can show them that you have a plan and there's a method to the way that things get addressed and corrected. That's really what they want to see. Of course, the correction also take place, but that it's already being handled in an organized manner. Okay, so that's about the work order numbers and so on, which even for, not just because of the administrative review, but even for the purposes of your health inspector coming into your school. Even if something, let's say, didn't get corrected yet, and they're back again, but you can show them, oh look, yes, I have the work order number, and I checked again, whenever, it could have been last week or whatever, this is what the status of it is. So it shows that you're on top of it, and there is progress. They understand some things take time, you know, to happen, but that there's some progress, not that things are just being ignored. Okay, in addition, make sure that you have your current permit to operate posted. So those two things have to be posted, the current inspection and the permit to operate. Okay, now, for professional standards, the bottom of page 5 on your checklist. Has the manager, satellite assistant, assistant manager attended our district meetings? This year, they've been August 16th and October 12th. Supervisor meetings that would pertain to you with respect to your individual supervisors, any meetings that they have called. And if for some reason you have not, then we need you to comment on here. We're required, the district is required to keep a record of the number of hours that all of our food service staff receives in professional standards training. And there are minimum hours that they have established that we must not just provide, that you have to attend. That we can exceed them, but there's a minimum. And so if you repeatedly do not attend our district in service, you're gonna have a problem meeting your the requirements for the year. And this is not anything that we at our level have implemented or established. It is a requirement of the DOA. So we have to make sure that everyone meets that. Has the manager, satellite assistant, assistant manager viewed monthly training webinars? The signatures have to be on the rosters. You need to keep, as well as, we know that you provided copies of the rosters, you know, you sent them in, but you need to have on hand at your schools the rosters as well, that show that that ongoing training is being given on a monthly basis via the webinars. And here, this is talking about what the requirement is. It is full-time and part-time personnel that are required. There's a difference in the number of hours that are required depending on what position or if you're full-time or part-time. But it involves everyone receiving continuing education and training. And it's actually established by the USDA. There's the statute where it was established. So with what we provide you in district training sessions, in services, monthly training, the meetings with the managers that the supervisors provide, and so on, that more than gives enough opportunity for everyone to meet the minimums, okay? So it is appreciated that you make sure that all of your part-time staff, if they're absent on the day that you showed a webinar, then do a makeup with them. They can sit there and watch it. You know, you can just have them watch it. You don't have to be there the whole time with them, but you have to make sure that they too are meeting it. Now, you are the selected, you're no longer the focus, we've got the 25 selected schools, and we've already established that on March 24th, we don't know the location yet, we will be sending you an email with that, but on March 24th, and you have this flyer in your folders. That is a date that we are going to, not only, before then we will have met with you again, because we're going to have training with you on February 24th, but on March 24th, that is the date that we're going to bring in all of the part-time and full-time, okay? It's the only teacher planning day we have left, so it is highly, highly important that Today, you post that, not just post it, but explain it to your staff that that day is, we need them. We need them to be there. Because we're going to have a session that everyone will be present, but we are focusing the information on what the part-timers would need to know to reinforce everything that you already have taught them and reviewed with them. They can hear it from different people again, so that they know that it's not just you being, super picky about something, but that it's actually a federal requirement. And they'll have an opportunity to ask questions and whatnot, so we really need for them to come. We will offer it, like we did 3 years ago, for those of you that remember, we'll offer it in English and in Spanish.
Right.
So we'll be taking a survey where you'll provide us with a number of how many of your staff prefer to hear it in which language, so that we know the size of the rooms we need and so on and so forth. It'll all take place on that same day. So please announce to them, for them to put that on their, must-dos, and of course, obviously they're paid for it, needless to say, but we really need them there. It's a big help for them to have a chance, and I know from previous training of the part-time, that it makes them feel more part of not only, being told what to do, but they get to voice what their concerns are. They take more ownership in what's happening because the time is being dedicated to them. On that day, we will probably have, like in the morning, it'll be when we deal with all the issues that the part-time staff needs to hear, although you'll be present as well, because obviously you work together, right? So you'll know what has been said to them and so on, so you can, it'll be a good flow from there back into the schools to put it into action. And then after lunch, we'll continue meeting with the full-time staff only. The part-time will be dismissed and we'll continue with the full-time staff. So please make sure that you post this. They will be paid for 4 hours, and it will be from 7:30 to 11:30, the time frame. So if they were to have appointments that they need to make on that day, tell them, please, afternoon, so that they do not miss this, okay? All right, back to now page 6. You are going to be receiving, we've ordered them already. For those of you that were audited before, maybe you still have your audit boxes. It was box 1 and box 2, remember, that we provided you with. And you'll have a specific list of the documents that belong in each of the 2 boxes, right? Now, box 1 is the primary, main box. That's the one that's going to contain the documents that more than likely, almost positively, the auditors are going to request, and you will be giving them these documents as they ask for them, okay? We don't just automatically just give them the whole thing, right? We give them as they need, as they request. That will be the one that's handy, visible, that you are, that you'll have there. Now, box 2 is a box that contains other backup supporting documents that we think could be asked for, and we don't necessarily want to show them that we have them already there, but if they ask for it, you've got it, right? So you don't want to have both boxes open and displayed, and then they start browsing through and see what they find. That we don't work it that way, right? We're very helpful to them in handing them what they need as they request. So these are things, the list of items that are needed, and like weekly rosters, you will, these are the weeks of February, right? That you will be printing the weekly rosters. End of month, you have to print one actually when? Today. And then you'll have one again at the end of February and so on, and you'll get the reminders that, like Patty said, that Olga sends out. Production and menu records for the entire month of February, that's what they're gonna be looking at. District menu, like I said, you have the current copies right now. Those are the ones that you're to be using, and discard anything else you have. If there's updates, you'll have those as well. The meal service temperature records, final attendance bulletins. Make sure that it is final and not the preliminary attendance bulletins. For any rosters, the rosters, you'll have to have them, neatly organized in a folder. Of course, after having been thoroughly checked and input. We did have 2 audits ago, like Patty was mentioning, they'll stay through the end of the day. And at this particular school, that they had rosters that on the day of their audit, just couldn't be avoided, And they observed how really everything was being done perfectly, according to procedure. At the very end, you know, they're just standing, waiting, watching. The one thing the manager forgot to do after, you know, the list had come and they had been input and they verified with the attendance bulletin that none of those kids were absent and all that, and then they were still waiting, just standing around. She didn't know that they were waiting to see anything else, and the papers were put away, right? Finished with that. The one thing that did not happen is that the checked off list was not compared to what the cashier actually entered. That was the one step that she missed, okay? So that's why it's important. They know what our procedure is, and they know what it should be, because obviously that's part of verifying that there wasn't human error in the entry. So that's why every part of the detail, you know, what's that saying, the devil's in the details, or something like that, right? So the details have to be followed. The district printout of analysis meal serve report, that will be provided to you by Food and Nutrition. Edit checks, worksheets, if it applies to you. The CRCRs will be printed at our office if you had any, so that we want to make sure that we have for everyone, and anything that you might have printed, so no one forgets, we'll print them out here as well. You have your copies anyway. The webinar rosters from the monthly webinars, you want to have that in a training folder. Your civil rights agenda, the HACCP weekly, the weekly checklist, but in addition to that, where you see here it says description of program, review, and facility. Do you recall what that piece of paper is? You don't have to do it, once a year. It's the first page that goes in your HACCP book, right?
Yes.
And that's where you have to put like how many steamers or
Yeah,
all
that
different
first
types
page,
of
yes.
equipment. It has to be signed by your principal, and it has to be dated for this school year.
Yes.
Okay, so just make sure, look back at that checklist, see, at that document, the program review facility document, see if you've got a current one in there. If not, you can do it now. Of course, all the training rosters, equipment, the temperature records for the storage, the frozen and refrigerated. We were caught on that on the last audit as well, one location that, like Patty mentioned, if you look at one of those documents and it says 40, 40, 40, 40, there's something fishy about that, right? There's something fishy about that. Okay, at this one school, as the auditors at breakfast time were walking around and looking and so on, they spotted a refrigerator, a reach-in, not the walk-in, a reach-in, and the temperature was climbing. And it was already, climbing sufficiently that it was clear that that unit did not have the right temperature when they walked in that morning.
Oh, because it couldn't drop that quick.
Yet, when I ran and looked at their equipment temperature log, it said 40, like every other day. And then, the manager said, oh, it's been giving us trouble. It's been giving you trouble? So then, that means that yesterday that said 40, it couldn't have been either, right? So even though they did not have food in there, they had a personal item of, an employee had stuck in, I don't know, a cup of water or something. But the point is, it didn't have on it the sign that said, do not use, that we would have to put up if the piece of equipment is not at right temperature. We've got to make sure that we've got a work order on it and it says do not use, and so on. And certainly, the temperature can't say 40 for that day on your record, because clearly the person was just automatically putting things in. So please make sure that they're really taking seriously. I think the more training the part-time people receive, the more they feel that their job is important, because it is fulfilling the needs of safety of the meals that we're serving to the students, and it's so that they don't feel like they just have this tedious work to do that's not meaningful. When people think that they know that what they're doing is meaningful and important, I think they'll take more pride in what they're doing. So keep training them, because that's how our psyche works. Student meal restrictions, the visitations that are related to DOA. In other words, the National School Lunch, copy of that, the annual storage facility review, and the new one this year is the school breakfast program review. that is only at 50% of our locations that it's required to be done. So your school may or may not have been one of the 50% that your supervisors selected to do it at, okay? But, so that you know, you're aware that that exists. Any field trip that you have at the school, you need to have a copy of the letter that went to the parents, because that should have offered them the opportunity to get a meal from food service on the trip. That's why they want to see that the parents were informed that they could get a meal from us. And again, like I said, the health inspections, also storeroom issue reports. Please make sure that you and your staff are keeping up with writing down all the items that are pulled out of your storeroom or your refrigeration and so on, because that has to match with what the quantity of meals that you're saying on your production record that you are preparing. Okay, so there has to, all those things have to go hand in hand. Also, what do you need to do for any recipe that on your production record you use the code SR? What does SR mean, first of all? See recipe. So you have to do what?
Print out the recipe.
You've got to print a recipe for that amount. Exactly. And now that recipes, many of them have been reviewed and revised, it's even more important to make sure you have the most current recipe printed. Now, if you serve that same item, repeatedly over the cycle, you don't have to keep printing. If the recipe's the same as the one you already have on file for the same quantity, you don't have to print another one. So you can have just a recipe book that you can put them in numerical sequence if that's easy for you, easier to find it that way, whatever, that you can show, yes, we have it here, easy reference for the cook to know how things need to be done, okay? How the recipe needs to be prepared. Vendor invoices, if you had any transfer of food in or out of your school, because if they want to see how you're using your food and that you are accounting for it properly, and they're also going to look at what your leftover counts are, okay? Are you like way high on them, or do you have too many zeros in that leftover column? What does it tell anyone that looks at a production record if the leftover count is 0, 0, 0, and then maybe there's 5 of something, and then 0, 0, 0, what is it telling them?
Because they didn't have a choice at the end.
The kids that came toward the end, forget the choice. What you see is what you get, right? And we can't allow that. So we've got to make sure that we are, cognizant of those things, because the records, the papers tell the story of what we did, even though they're not here to see every day of our operation. Okay. Number 2, conduct a brief meeting with food service staff. These are things that need to happen, not just once, but like I said, things that you need to remind them of. Whenever you see that someone is forgetting, or a couple people are forgetting to do something, it's time for a refresher on things, right? Now, here, one of the things it lists is importance of weighing items. What I want to say about that is that the day of the audit, when they're at your school, if visually the portions, or things that are pre-cupped or as they're serving or whatnot, if they appear to be the right amount, they're not going to weigh everything that you prepared to see if it's correct. But if they see, for example, on your side salads, and they see that square container is halfway filled, visually, does that tell you that you gave them enough for it to count as the green vegetable?
No.
No, you didn't. So, something that's obvious to the eye, they're going to ask you, right, they're going to question you and say, could you please weigh that in from here so we can see that it meets? And that's not going to meet. And let's say that example, it wouldn't meet. So, they aren't going to get into weighing unless there's something that's visually obvious, right, it stands out to them. Again, documenting the food served, the leftovers, as well as the quantities that are put out. I mean, they have to count. Please, the importance of counting. Not ever trying to, when you see the POS counts the day after you serve, not trying to make the balance, working backward to put quantities that will equal what the POS entry is. No, those things should happen independent of each other, right? The POS counts are whatever the cashiers entered, and the other information is based on how many portions were put out, how many portions were left over, physically counted. Obviously, you don't count the number of scoops left in a pan.
No.
there, you know, if the pan is supposed to hold 30 and it's about halfway, you know, then you have about 15. Those things are educated guesses, but things that can be counted individually need to be counted, okay, for the leftovers. Okay. Comparing meal counts that you have with what was claimed. We will provide you with the claim that went in for your school for the month of February. And you will have, we will tell you what you need to print to have the meals served, and those reports are compared to each other. Of course, all that comparison is taking place with you and your supervisors and whatnot ahead of time anyway. But the auditors are gonna wanna see it as well. Let me mention now, so I don't remember if it affects anyone in the room, but since some supervisors, a couple of them had 0 schools selected for the audit, but yet others had 4 or 5, I don't know, 5 I think was the most, then what we did is, some schools have to be assigned to be prepared by a different supervisor than what normally goes to your school.
Right.
Okay, so it could, you know, affect some of you. But the supervisor will be visiting your school as frequently as your regular supervisor would have been visiting during the time to prepare you, so.
Pretty much every week they'll start
Yeah.
going to your school as of this week.
You'll see them every week. Don't think that when you see them, they're like, oh my God, they're back again. No, they're back to make sure that they can look over everything in detail, because if you only go once for the month, you'll never see as much as you need to see, okay?
You wanna see them every day, if they could.
Okay. All right, we'll make sure that we assign them every day. No, they'll go to work with you. The thing is to help
Yeah,
you.
to help.
Exactly, that's the point, to help you.
Help you make sure those kids aren't getting the milk.
Luann helped that 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah, Luann helped.
Yeah, but
Okay,
Shalisa
no
doesn't have that many this year, so here, this group, I think it's only Sabrina that's gonna have a different person. You'll have Veronica, yeah.
Okay. All right, but all of them are getting the same instruction in terms of what they need to do, just like you're getting the same instruction. So, it's equal preparation.
We meet with them every week too, so
Yeah.
they have to meet too.
They have to meet too.
Right, Luann? Lots of meetings.
Yes.
Right. Okay, reviewing rosters will be very important for field trips and out of cafeteria meals. So, and following all the procedures that we already talked about. Okay, on the next page, page 7 of your checklist, the information that's there on number 5 really is what appeared on your questionnaire. So if any of you still needed to verify any of the information or whatnot, like Patty said, you can go ahead and send a revised copy with additional information and whatnot. Okay, now, production records. Production records is pertaining to your schools is the one thing that the auditors will be reviewing in detail before they even see you, okay? And when they come, then they start asking questions, even before they've been there. And if they spot a problem that is, let's say there was no fruit component served on a day, well, because the production record doesn't show that there was a fruit component. Definitely, those meals can't even be claimed if we did not have a fruit component, okay? So even though you're a cashier could have been very good at entering a ghost item so that the breakfast didn't get charged, but the production record tells another part of the story, and if the item is on the production record, then it better be on the storeroom issue that those items came out of your storeroom or your refrigeration, in order to have it available to put it on the serving lines, and it appears in the production record. So, and if you didn't order enough or receive enough, that's why the vendor invoices and transfer forms are looked at. So if you showed that you served 500 of something, but you received 100 of that item, then that too does not jive. It's not in sync with your other information. These are people that are used to this is what they do, just like you're professionals at what you do. So they are going to be able to put the pieces together, and at a distance before they even arrive, they're going to know what is to be questioned. And they'll start sending us emails with, provide an explanation to this, or what happened there, or whatnot. And then, of course, if they find something like that, when they're at your school, then they're even more vigilant, because they're already, have some, a little warning flag that came up. Make sure, please, that all your condiments are added, because that's very important for the nutritional analysis. That you do have portions planned. Of course, that comes from your, what? In the planning section of the production records. When you first open a production record, that you haven't done anything on that day's production record yet, but what already appears there?
Apart from the portions plan, it's already populated.
Right? Whatever you did on your portions plan, weeks ahead, auto-populates, so you already have the recipe numbers and you have some quantities there based on what you planned for. You can still update that, because now that it's closer to the serving, that serving week, maybe a little better information, and you can update the quantities. You always have to update the part of, even though you said you plan on serving 300 portions of something, let's say, but now you have to divide it up in the student and the adult column, right? So you have to do that, because that doesn't come from portions plan screen. That's something you have to divide up, and whatever quantities you put there, it automatically then adjusts your portions plan total quantity. But the fact that you did portions plan already puts a lot of information on your production record to begin with. So please remember, every field requires information, and if you have any question, let's say that you notice that something got rung up, that wasn't even being offered, maybe because it was left on the overlay by mistake, you would have to put a comment. If the cashiers in error used one key instead of another, and you see that creates this imbalance in your what was served, what we don't do is just say, oh, I didn't serve that, but I'm gonna add that recipe number so it looks like I really had it on the line. No, you know that they used that key in error, right? And instead of one of the other, let's say, vegetable keys, that they confused it or something, make a comment. To err is human, and it's okay. We just have to research the mistake and note, because it shows that you are really using your management skills, and you're aware, and you check it, and now you have an explanation, and then we're good, right? The counts between the POS that comes from the cashier's entry and your actual quantities served are not always
the same.
Right, they're not gonna be identical, because if it's something that is scooped to serve, definitely,
not gonna be.
it's not gonna be the same, because, even if your servers are very accurate, maybe it yielded slightly different amount, the recipe yielded a little differently, or the scoop was a little bit more round than what it should have been, and eventually that you lose servings that way or whatnot, so it's okay. It's just when the discrepancies are very large, then you need to research, because it may be as simple as a pan of something burned, it never reached the serving line, okay? So you need to say, well, that was prepared, but X amount was discarded, because, or the next day, if you have a leftover from today, and tomorrow, when you bring it out and you heat it up, it doesn't look good, like like broccoli, maybe it doesn't look good.
Oh, no.
You tried to heat it and use it the next day, but you look and you say, this is not acceptable. Put it on your production record, and then put that you discarded it, and was not appetizing after being heated, discarded, so that's fine. What we cannot have is just lost leftovers, right? What happened to this leftover and this one and this one and this one, and you keep going. They do woof, we can't have that, we've gotta have accountability. Right? Because that is all money that's been given to us and we've spent, we've got to be accountable for it. Okay, so I've really covered everything there, and of course, the records align with the recipes, and like I said, everything is linked. So on the production record, those are arrows going every which way to all the important pieces of information that have to be looked at by you, that the recipe numbers that are there are the actual numbers, because a lot of them are similar, right? You know that, and it becomes difficult. But you need to use the right recipe numbers. Of course, if you're following the menu, the recipe number is right on the menu, so that's easy. if you're, it's a leftover, look at yesterday's production record and you'll see what the correct recipe number is. Because sometimes we see that it goes to the next day and then a different recipe number was picked. The description is still chicken, but it was a different chicken. You know, I mean, that can happen, but refer back to your previous day's record. And all these areas, I mean, you know, does anyone have any questions? Because I'm not gonna go over that unless you have a question. You could have a question, it's okay. No? Okay, good. Make sure that on the leftover code, that you are using the codes that are pertain to that particular item, right? Return to stock is only allowed in a handful of situations. Refer back to what those are, so you don't start using it on other things that we're not allowed to use it on. Okay? Okay, I mentioned before about the meal compliance check, how they check to see did we have enough items out there. This is on page 7, number 7. This calculation, okay? The way that, another thing that they do to check to see if we offered and served what the students should have gotten based on the number of meals we claimed is they total up the food items that were served, right? Total number of food components, items served, and divided by the total number of meals that we claimed that we served on that day that we want reimbursement for, right? The result has to be greater than or equal to 0. The answer to that equation has to be greater than or equal to 0 at breakfast or lunch. Can you figure why, in order for us to be in compliance, why does it have to be 3 or more?
They have to get at least 3 components.
What was that?
They have to get at least 3 components.
Exactly. So, we know that not all students take only the 3, and not all of them take every max 5 that they can, right? It's somewhere in for lunch. It's somewhere in between that the reality is. And usually the older the student, the higher that number is because they're hungry kids and they're gonna take as much as they can. But this is how it's done. If you want to cross-check, and we will, our supervisors will do it, spot check on some days, the auditors definitely will do it. Here's just a simple example. Let's say those were the items that were served that day. And this comes from your production record, these numbers, right? So there were 400 milk and 150 juice and so on. When you get to the pizza and ham and cheese, you see that the number, whatever you served, is doubled because? Exactly. It counts for both the bread and the protein, the meat. So it counts twice, and so does the ham and cheese. In this example, when you add it all up, there were 2,050 total components served. And there were 500 meals claimed. When you divide 2,050 by 500, you come up with 4.1. That's in compliance, okay? So that's the method used numerically to see if we served enough for what, and this is based on the portions, the things that are counted, right? Numbers left over, all that, all right. Now, we also provided for you in your folders, I'm not gonna go over it, typical errors and omissions from the production records. These are things that after reviewing many, many records are the things that are most commonly found and that we would ask for you to look over your own, as you can have it like a reference guide to see what things, if any, you tend to forget about putting in. Comments, super important, comments, okay, for any special condition that exists. And you can go through them yourself. It's don't use generic recipe keys and so on, district menu has to be followed. Anything missing information, physical counts are required, not trying to match them to the POS counts, carrying forward your leftovers, being accurate with the numbers, the condiments, and so on. Now, I think here, no one said they have Head Start, right? So they eat snacks, so we don't have to even talk about this. How about the fresh fruit and vegetables? You have? Yes, you have a lot of things, right? Okay. Okay, so For that, the boxes have to be labeled separately, because what you receive, your paper goods and your produce and all that has to be labeled separately. You have to keep good records on that, they have to be up to date. And if they ask, when do you give out the snacks, when do the kids eat them, certainly they have to be eaten on site, okay? And it can't be during breakfast or lunch, right? So they can't just add it on as another item on their tray. It has to be a distinct separate from their mealtime. They can't be putting them in their book bags for later or whatnot. So that's really what you need to know. If you need counts adjusted, because you have a change in the number of kids or whatnot, you can always make an adjustment on that. And that is it for us. Does anyone have any remaining question or energy to ask it? Okay, if like we said, you'll be seeing the supervisors frequently. We will meet back with you again on February 24th. And then the next time will be March 24th with your part-time staff. Please, that flyer, put it like on top, tippity top of your folder, so that as soon as you get back to your schools, you can share with them today, so that they start knowing, we're way ahead of time, so that they don't make any other commitments for that day. We greatly appreciate your cooperation and your efforts, and you will shine like you did last time, so thank you very much.